Our thinking on training of journalists and training of media practitioners has changed quite a lot over the last few years. We used to do a lot of standalone training. We increasingly feel that training isolated from a newsroom or isolated in terms of getting a group of journalists together for a relatively short period of time is not necessarily very effective. So we tend to do very long-term mentoring of journalists. Sometimes someone goes out into a community for 6 months, for example, with a community broadcasting radio station or another media operation, and there's a long-term process of journalistic support or media support. But also we mainstream journalism training and media training into our programming. So when we're actually producing, for example, with a national partner, we've been recently working with RTA in Afghanistan, the state broadcaster in Afghanistan, on a series of major public debates in that country, really trying to open up the democratic space in that country to an open, clear, fair political debate. We will support partners within that institution as we do that. So increasingly we're mainstreaming training into the rest of what we do. I think the main challenges are making sure there's a clear sustainable impact and making sure, yes, that the right people are engaged in the training. There's been a huge number of journalism training programs that frankly have not been have not equipped journalists to do their job right, because because as is frequently criticised, has been criticised here this morning, is that unless you're creating an environment in which those journalists can operate as journalists, you're not really going to achieve very much. So media managers are important, but also creating the opportunity for journalists to be journalists. So if you go off and train a set of journalists who are working with an institution which effectively is there to communicate perhaps a government agenda, or perhaps it's another agenda, commercial or a factional or a religious or an ethnic or another agenda, then that journalist is not going to operate as being a journalist. So increasingly, particularly the kind of countries we are working in, which are often conflict affected or fragile or fractured states, a lot of the media system is now significantly, there's a lot of media that is there to advance a particular agenda. So having a set of journalist training programs which don't really embed themselves and understand the political realities of the media institutions that are working in those countries, but real challenges facing independent media, it's not going to make a lot of difference. You do have to have joined up, holistic strategies which actually enable real change to take place, and just doing a bit of training is not going to have a big impact unless you really do understand that political context.